air battle cut off the Japanese ability to reinforce and supply Lit. Although fierce fighting continued on Lit for months, the U.S. Army was in control. On the 15th of December, 1944, landings against minimal resistance took place on the southern beaches of the island of Mindoro, a key location in the planned Lingayen Gulf operations, in support of major landings scheduled on Luzon. On the 9th of January, 1945, General Kruger's 6th Army landed its first units on the western coast of Luzon. Almost 175,000 men followed within a few days. With heavy air support, Army units pushed inland, taking Clark Field, 40 miles, 64 kilometers, northwest of Manila. In the last week of January, American stretcher party carrying a wounded soldier through a devastated Manila street. 23 February 1945, two more major landings followed, one to cut off the Bataan Peninsula, and another, that included a parachute drop, south of Manila. Pincers closed on the city, and on the 3rd of February 1945, American forces pushed into Manila. The month-long battle for Manila resulted in over 100,000 civilian deaths and was the scene of the worst urban fighting by American forces in the Pacific's theater. As the advance on Manila continued from the north and the south, the Bataan Peninsula was rapidly secured. On 16 February, paratroopers and amphibious units assaulted the island fortress of Corregidor, and resistance ended there on 27 February. In all, 10 U.S. divisions and 5 independent regiments battled on Luzon, making it the largest campaign of the Pacific War, involving more troops than the U.S. had used in North Africa, Italy, or southern France. Forces included the Mexican Escuadron 201 Fighter Squadron as part of the Fuerza Aérea Expedicionaria Mexicana, with the squadron attached to the 58th Fighter Group of the United States Army Air Forces that flew tactical support missions. 174 of the 250,000 Japanese troops defending Luzon, 80% died. 175. The last Japanese soldier in the Philippines, Hiroo Onoda, surrendered on the 9th of March 1974. 176. The 8th Army invaded Palawan Island, between Borneo and Mindoro, the 5th largest and westernmost Philippine island, on the 28th of February 1945, with landings at Puerto Princesa. The Japanese put up little direct defense of Palawan, but cleaning up pockets of Japanese resistance lasted until late April, as the Japanese used their common tactic of withdrawing into the mountain jungles, dispersed as small units. Throughout the Philippines, Filipino guerrillas aided U.S. forces to dispatch the holdouts. U.S. troops approaching Japanese positions near Baguio, Luzon. 23 March 1945, the U.S. 8th Army moved on to its first landing on Mindanao. The 17th of April, the last of the major Philippine islands to be taken. Then followed the invasion and occupation of Panay, Cebu, Negros and several islands in the Sulu archipelago. These islands provided bases for the U.S. 5th and 13th Air Forces to attack targets throughout the Philippines and the South China Sea. Final stages. Allied offensives in Burma, 1944-1945. In late 1944 and early 1945, the Allied Southeast Asia Command launched offensives into Burma, intending to recover most of the country, including Rangoon, the capital, before the onset of the monsoon in May. The offensives were fought primarily by British, Commonwealth, Chinese and American forces against Japan, assisted to some degree by Thailand, the Burman National Army and the Indian National Army. The Commonwealth land forces were drawn primarily from the United Kingdom, British India and Africa. Royal Marines landing at Ram River Indian 15 Corps, including 2 West African divisions, 177, advanced along the coast in Arakan province, at last capturing Akib Island. They landed troops behind the retreating Japanese, inflicting heavy casualties, and captured Ramri Island and Chijuba Island, establishing airfields used to support the offensive into central Burma. The Chinese Expeditionary Force captured Mongyu and Lasho, 178, while the Chinese and American Northern Combat Area Command resumed its advance in northern Burma. In late January 1945, these two forces linked up at Sapor. The Ledo Road was completed, linking India and China, but too late in the war to have any significant effect. British soldiers patrolling the ruins of a Burmese town during the advance in Mandalay, January 1945. The Japanese Burma Area Army attempted to forestall the main Allied attack by withdrawing their troops behind the Irrawaddy River. Lieutenant General Hitake Miura, the new Japanese commander in Burma, hoped that the Allies' lines of communications would be overstretched trying to cross this obstacle. However, the advancing British 14th Army switched its axis of advance to outflank the Japanese. During February, the 14th Army secured bridgeheads across Irrawaddy. On the 1st of March, mechanized units of 4 Corps captured a supply center of Magdala, throwing the Japanese into disarray. While the Japanese attempted to recapture Magdala, XXXII Corps captured Mandalay. The Japanese armies were heavily defeated, and with the capture of Mandalay, the Burmese population and the Burma National Army, which the Japanese had raised, turned against the Japanese. During April, 14th Army advanced 300 miles, 480 kilometers, south towards Rangoon, but was delayed by Japanese rearguards 40 miles, 64 kilometers, to the north. Slim feared that the Japanese would defend Rangoon house to house during the monsoon, which would commit his army to prolonged action with disastrously. Inadequate supplies, and in March he had asked that a plan to capture Rangoon by an amphibious force, Operation Dracula, which had been abandoned earlier, be reinstated. 179. Dracula was launched on 1 May to find that the Japanese had already evacuated. The troops that occupied Rangoon linked up with 14th Army 5 days later, securing the Allies' lines of communication. The Japanese forces, which had been bypassed by the Allied advances, attempted to break out across the Sitorng River during June and July to rejoin the Burma Area Army, which had regrouped in Tenasserim in southern Burma. They suffered 14,000 casualties, half their strength. Overall, the Japanese lost some 150,000 men in Burma. Only 1,700 Japanese soldiers surrendered and were taken prisoner. 180. The Allies were preparing to make amphibious landings in Malaya when word of the Japanese surrender arrived. Iwo Jima. Raising the flag on Iwo Jima, an iconic photograph taken by Joe Rosenthal on the 23rd of February 1945 depicts 6 United States Mariners raising a U.S. flag atop Mount Suribashi. Although the Marianas were secure and American bases firmly established, the long 1,200 miles, 1,900 kilometers, range from the Marianas meant that B-29 air crews bombing Japan found themselves ditching at sea if severely damaged. Attention focused on the small island of Iwo Jima, about halfway between the Marianas and Japan. American planners recognized the strategic importance of the island. The island was used by the Japanese as an early warning station against impending air raids on Japanese cities. 181. Japanese aircraft based on Iwo Jima were able to attack B-29s on their bombing missions, and even to attack installations in the Marianas themselves. 181. The capture of Iwo Jima would provide emergency landing airfields for B-29s and a base for P-51 fighter escorts. 182, as well as land-based air support to protect U.S. naval fleets in Japanese waters. 183, however, the Japanese had also come to realize the strategic value of Iwo Jima, and Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuraibayashi was assigned command of island in May 1944. The Japanese began constructing elaborate defenses, making the best possible use of the island's natural caves and uneven, rocky terrain. The island was transformed into a massive network of bunkers, hidden guns, and underground passageways leading from one strong point to another. 184. The Japanese also went to great lengths to construct large underground chambers, some as much as 5 stories deep, to serve as storage and hospital areas with thick walls and ceilings of reinforced concrete. 184. A series of strong points covering the landing areas were also built, most covered with sand and carefully camouflaged. Well camouflaged 120mm and 6-inch guns were emplaced so that their fire could be directed to the beaches. Smaller caliber artillery, anti-aircraft guns, and mortars were also hidden and located where only a direct hit could destroy them. 185. The Japanese were determined to make the Americans pay a high price for Iwo Jima and were prepared to defend it to the death. Kuraibayashi knew that he could not win the battle, but hoped to inflict severe casualties so costly that it would slow the American advance on Japan and may give the Japanese bargaining power. 184. In February, a total of 21,000 Japanese troops were deployed on Iwo Jima. 184. The American Operation Detachment, to capture the island involved 3 Marine divisions of the Amphibious Corps, a total of 70,647 troops, 186, under the command of Holland Smith. From mid-June 1944, Iwo Jima came under American air and naval bombardment, until the days leading up to the invasion. 185. An intense naval and air bombardment preceded the landing, but did little but drive the Japanese further underground, making their positions impervious to enemy fire. The hidden guns and defenses survived the bombardment virtually unscathed. On the morning of the 19th of February, 1945, 30,000 men under the command of Major General Harry Schmidt landed on the southeast coast near Mount Suribashi, where most of the island's defenses were concentrated. As soon as the Marines pushed inland, they came under devastating machine gun and artillery fire. By the end of the day, the Marines reached the west coast, but their losses were as severe, almost 2,000 men killed or wounded. On the 23rd of February, the 28th Marine Regiment reached the summit of Mount Suribashi, prompting the now famous raising the flag on Iwo Jima photograph, often cited as the most reproduced photograph ever and the archetypal representation of the Pacific War. For the rest of February, the Americans pushed north, and by the 1st of March, had taken 2/3 of the island. It was not until 26 March that the island was secured. Iwo Jima was one of the bloodiest battles fought by the Americans during the Pacific War. American casualties were 6,821 killed and 19,207 wounded. 187. The Japanese losses totaled well over 20,000 men killed, with only 1,083 prisoners taken. 187. Historians debate whether it was strategically worth the casualties sustained. 188. Okinawa. USS Bunker Hill burns after being hit by 2 kamikazes. At Okinawa, The kamikazes caused 4,900 American deaths. U.S. Marines pass a dead Japanese soldier in a destroyed village on Okinawa. April 1945. The largest and bloodiest battle fought by the Americans against the Japanese came at Okinawa. The seizure of islands in the Ryukyus was to have been the last step before the actual invasion of the Japanese home islands. Okinawa, the largest of the Ryukyu Islands, was located 340 miles, 550 kilometers, from Kyushu. 189. The capture of Okinawa would provide air bases to intensify aerial bombardment.